Disney Parks. Welcome to the happiest place on earth. Disneyland went from being one of the most visited places in the world to being completely desolate in the blink of an eye due to the pandemic. We are seeking to implement a marketing plan to successfully reopen the happiest places on earth in a post-COVID-19 world. Please enjoy this short advertisement announcing the reopening of Disney World in Florida. Disneyland is one of the top parks that operates under the Disney Park brand. This is the oldest of all of the parks and offers many unique experiences that are sure to incorporate all guests who enter. In 2019 alone, the park attracted over 155 million visitors and was generating revenues over $19.5 million a day. In order to understand how Disney parks were so successful before the COVID-19 pandemic, we need to understand the 4 Ps of Disney parks. Product. Disney parks, including Disneyland and Disney World, are just one aspect of Disney's tourism products. Disney also owns and operates hotels and cruises, which have also been adversely affected by COVID-19. Price. Disney parks have a broad range of prices depending on which attractions and which locations consumers are choosing from. The average cost is between $100 and $500 US. Place. As mentioned, Disney parks operate in several locations internationally as well as domestically. Disney parks are a universal brand. Finally, promotion. While Disney parks have been very successful in generating revenue, they still rely on promotions. Annual passes, holiday events, and seasonal passes are a few tangible promotions. Disney relies heavily on word-of-mouth promotion too. It is not called the happiest place on earth for no reason, after all.
Let's take a look at Disney's SWOT analysis. We were able to identify several strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We were able to identify that for weaknesses, there is a high cost of operations for Disney parks. They're also vulnerable to competitors such as Six Flags, Universal Studios, and others. There is a high dependence on locations for theme parks in North America as opposed to those outside of the US. There's few opportunities for significant growth. For strengths, we were able to identify that Disney is reliable. They always seem to generate a positive experience. They also are always able to generate large cash flows. High brand profile. What we mean by this is that the name Disney and the logo is recognized worldwide. They have a high diversified portfolio. They have theme parks, movies, streaming services, merchandise, and more. They have significant customer loyalty. Global recognition and expansion. For opportunities, we were able to identify that Disney has an eco-friendly image, expansion into emerging economies, cheap web platforms, emerging movie markets in different countries. For threats, we recognize that coronavirus has closed theme parks, loss of revenue from piracy in movies, changing audience and trends makes it difficult, new emerging competitors, and high demanding market.
Disneyland aims to entertain, inform, and inspire people around the globe through the power of unparalleled storytelling, reflecting the iconic brands, creative minds, and innovation technologies that makes Disneyland the world's premier entertaining company. Typically, people assume that children, teens, and their families are Disney's target, but the actual target are teenagers and adventurous adults, while also being family friendly. But Disneyland isn't the only amusement park targeting teens and adults, as their competitors, Universal Studios, Knottberry Farm, and Six Flags, are trying to recreate the same experience. Though the amusement park sections between Disney and its competitors are similar, Disney's theme focuses around beloved characters such as Mickey Mouse and Disney princesses, trying to create a fantasy magical land experience, while, say, Universal Studios' theme is around blockbusters hits like Harry Potter and Jurassic Park. But what really sets Disney apart and gives them a competitive edge is that strive to be the most magical place on earth.
All right, that was our positioning statement, and now we are going to move on to the perceptual map of Disney theme parks. So a perceptual map essentially is a graphic design to help you locate where in an industry a company is. So there's two axes that we chose to base these parks on. On the x-axis, we have accessible versus luxurious in terms of price to attend these parks. This includes everything from having to travel there by plane, car, whatever it is, and also while you're in the park, stuff that you have to do. So on the left side, we have very accessible. So this is stuff that is less expensive. It's much more accessible to people of all kinds of backgrounds and incomes. And then on the right side, we have very luxurious places. These are places that are very expensive. Often they will require plane travel to get to them, or they are just generally very expensive. And then on the y-axis, we have theme versus ride cultured. So we saw this as with Disneyland, you have a lot of reasons to go there. On the theme cultured side of things, this is where you want to go because you love the Disney brand, you love the culture of the brand and the characters. You know, you have the characters meandering the park. You can purchase goods and stuff from the movies. Whereas in some other cases, for example, with Canada's Wonderland, this is a park where it is primarily just based on roller coasters and rides and entertainment. So for some people, they love to go to Disneyland because they have the rides, everything like that there. And for other people, it's more about the theme and culture of the park. Disney actually has done a tremendous job of trying to allocate for both of these groups, as is evident with in Disneyland in California. Right adjacent, they have California Adventure, which is not necessarily as much based on the Disney brand, but more just about more thrill-seeking individuals who love the rides, things like that. So in the top right corner, we see Disneyland Tokyo, which is the most expensive in terms of US dollars to attend to, and it's pretty much entirely themed on the brand. There are some rides at this place, but in comparison to the American parks, there aren't quite as many roller coasters, things like that. It's more just about the experience in eating food and wandering around and seeing characters and things like that. On the other side of it, down in the bottom left, we have things like local state fairs. These are very accessible. You don't have to fly somewhere to get to one of these. You can just find one in your local area in most places around the United States. And also, it's very ride cultured and not as much theme cultured. There can be elements of culture for the local town at these state fairs, but for the most part, it's not necessarily designed around some element of pop culture, but more so designed around, you know, bringing in rides and other forms of entertainment, and it's very accessible. We also have, for example, in the top left corner, the Enchanted Forest in Salem, Oregon. This is generally a more accessible location. It's in a lot of cases, you will have to fly or drive to get to this location, but once you're there, it's very theme cultured. They do have rides there, but it's mostly just about the weird culture of the spot. And we have some other examples here as well. So you'll see Canada's Wonderland down in the bottom. This is a more expensive location to attend to, but for the most part, it is not going to totally break your bank. And it is very much around the ride. There is not really any major elements of pop culture there. It's just about mostly the roller coaster. And so moving forward, we also can talk about the impact of COVID-19 on the brand. So with Disney parks in particular, there was a dramatic impact on the brand and the revenue for this company with this. there's a couple different elements to it. The first, there was a huge impact on employment. There were multiple layoffs in the beginning with shutdowns and everything like that, where a lot of gig and part-time workers at the Disney parks were cut off. And then when they were trying to reopen for the first and second time, there were examples of workers' unions, especially in Florida at Disney World, talking with Disney management about their demands for reopening the park in a safe manner and things like that. So as you can imagine, not only did this impact the brand because they had to account for less staff, but also there was definitely a lot of stress between upper management and the workers due to these meetings between the unions. And obviously to come to these agreements, they had to make some pretty major sacrifices on both ends. Next up, we can talk a little bit about all the parks being closed at once. So this was the first time ever that all 6 Disney parks worldwide were closed. This lasted for different amounts of time depending on the location and governmental differences. So some governments allowed parks to reopen at limited capacity, while others have remained fully closed for the entirety of this year since they were first shut down in early March. This is a full stop on Disney parks revenue for the most part. The Disney parks were a tremendous source of revenue for the Disney brand in the way of tickets, but also through merchandise in the park, things like that. And even with locations where they do have limited capacity, it is nowhere near the amount of revenue that they were making before. And next up, we have the hotels and housing. Disney provided a lot of hotels right adjacent to their parks. This was a tremendous source of income as well. And while the parks may reopen at limited capacity, nearly all of these hotels remain empty. The hotels are opened at limited capacity as well, but for the most part, their services go unused, much more so than the parks, because for a lot of people, they're not going to be staying for multiple days to visit these parks. It will mostly just be a 1 or 2 day thing, and it's mostly going to just be local people. So this is dramatic for the hotel section of Disney parks because there are very few people who are going to be using these, even less than people who are going to the parks already. For the next impact that we have some of the parks reopening. So obviously it's very dangerous to hold large gatherings at parks reopening, but luckily some local governments have allowed Disney parks to reopen. For example, Disney World in Florida has been allowed to reopen at limited capacity since July, while Disneyland in California has not been allowed to reopen at all. This is a major difference because Disney World has been allowed to continue to earn revenue, and it has helped to secure their cultural significance in that area. And the Florida governor actually even said, quote, "We think that the capacity can be further increased." So this is evident in cultural changes between the two areas, but it has definitely had a dramatic impact on the income for both of these parks. And finally, the last thing we can talk about is Disney posting their first loss. So this was a dramatic story when it hit the news, where Disney posted their first loss in revenue since 2001 in the Q2 of 2020. So the first time in nearly 20 years, they had to post a revenue loss due to the parks being closed. And they say from the reports that Disney lost $4.72 billion in Q2 alone, whereas compared to the previous year, they earned $1.43 billion in Q2. And the revenue fell to $11.8 billion, which is a lot of money. However, it's a decrease of nearly 42%. So it's very evident from all of this that the Disney parks have had a tremendous impact from COVID-19. There has been a dramatic loss in revenue, which has been of detriment to the Disney brand, unfortunately.
Our short-term marketing plan is this. So in our short-term marketing plan, this will cover our next 6 months in the case that COVID vaccine has been released, and we'll be able to reopen Disneyland to the public in accordance to local laws. And we're going to do this in 2 different priorities, or 2 different steps we can look at that as. In our first one, it's health and safety. So in the first 6 months of 2020, our biggest priority is assuring guest safety within the park in order to regain a high visitor volume. We will do this by integrating new sanitization stations as well as updating protocols that must be followed, such as wearing a mask at all times. By doing so, we hope to regain our segment's trust and comfort with attending Disneyland once again, and doing so in a very safe manner. We think that once we are able to reopen safely, we will be able to begin to adopt our long-term marketing plan and also be able to really strengthen this core market segment that we've been focusing on for such a long time. once we have the comfort in that first group of people, we think that more people will be able to follow, as we're going to talk about in my next part. So our second priority is our promotion and price changes. We're going to change our promotions and extend our annual passes, which, if you don't know what an annual pass is, they're pretty much passes that you pay a monthly payment on in order to attend Disneyland a certain number of times a year. A lot of due to COVID, a lot of the year for this year has been canceled out due to the fact that Disneyland has obviously been closed. So we're going to push all these annual passes to the following year, going into this first part of 2020. There'll also be discounted passes that will go through a reservation system in order to increase demand in a safe way. In doing so, we hope to attract the visitors that have annual passes once again and lock in our guests that visit the most, being those that are in Southern California with the annual passes. Then we hope to adjust the price to a lower price and spark demand within newer segments who aren't already annual pass holders. And when we're talking about reservation systems, we're really hoping that people will want to buy these discounted tickets and come, seeing that a lot of the annual pass holder members are coming, and spark a lot of interest and comfort in that idea of being able to come to Disneyland and it being safe. So that's why we'll be able to drop our prices but have a reservation system so that we can sell only a certain number of tickets.
Let's take a look at our long-term marketing plan. We believe that coronavirus has affected consumer behavior for Disney fans. Consumer patterns suggest that a fear of resurgence limits the future attendance for theme parks. We believe that a focus on health regulations can help. It is likely that a pandemic can occur in the future, and Disney can take steps now to be prepared, investing in better sanitation practices to create and maintain a safe environment, implementing more frequent in-depth health inspector visits. With new and effective safety measures, people will be more inclined to visit Disney parks. We also believe that a focus in new products is essential. Generating excitement can be easily done by offering a new product, like a new ride, a new theme park, and even the expansion of future parks. Marketing these products as much as possible will maintain excitement and increase attendance. We believe that Disney is the happiest place on earth, and by implementing these marketing steps, Disney's future is bright. For more information on our sources and references, please see our Word document. Thank you.